We are live and on the air. Meg, welcome to the internet. um, People are going to be moving on in, so I'm just going to start with the beginning. Welcome, everyone. This is In Theory, a one shot podcast network show where I, your host, and a fantastic guest end up talking about different RPG theory stuff. Some of that stuff is going to be directly involved with games and like the real crunchy bits, and some of the stuff is going to be more about um, some cultural stuff, some ideas that we have about why we make games, and some of the influences that we have when we make them. So today I have the incredible, fantastic Meguey Baker. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real honor.
You're my first guest.
Woo!
It's super rad for you to be here. We talked at Big Bad Con, um, and the conversations that we had there, as we had like many, um, there were a lot of stuff that you were talking about that really made me think about some deeper levels of not just the games that we're playing when we bring them to the table, but also what's going on the meta level with the people at the table. And so when I was thinking, what's the first episode going to be? I was like, wait, socialization in tabletop RPGs, and I can ask the expert, Meg Baker, and I'm super excited to get into it all. Meg, for the people though at home who don't know who you are, can you give us a little background about yourself?
Okay, cool. Um, I started playing role playing games when I was seven, which was 40 some odd years ago. I'd be 48 coming up here in a couple weeks. Um, I was steeped even before that time in a lot of different mythology,
Mm-hmm.
different religious viewpoints, viewing storytelling as a way that we make sense of our world. From birth, really, like at least memorably from being 3 years old. Like this is how we understand things. That we tell stories over and over and over again. Our family mythology, our cultural mythology,
Mm-hmm.
our what comes down in literature to try to make sense of our world, and that's a participatory act. This isn't just, the Aesop's fables or the Native American legends or the Greek and Roman mythology or whatever comes down in your faith. It's something that's participatory even now. Learning storytelling from, my grandfathers originally.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, they could tell a story. It could be a tiny anecdote about going to get your tire changed, and it would be engaging and hilarious and like right to the point. It wasn't like talking for 3 hours. It was these great stories. So that's the storytelling background. Coming right out of that is my early experience with Unitarian Universalism and Sufism and the way that those two uh, religious traditions, spiritual traditions, philosophical traditions inform the use of ritual in day to day life and how that goes hand in hand with storytelling to support how we view the world. If you have little rituals, even as much as, you know, being tucked in at night, good night,
Mm-hmm.
sleep well. These are rituals that help us interpret our world and go through life. Um, Further on, in terms of the rest of my credentials set, um, I've, I'm a museum worker. I've been doing work professionally in museums for the past dozen years. I spent 12 years as a facilitator for people dealing with serious postpartum depression, and
Mm-hmm.
most of that work involved um, designing a space where people could come to their own knowledge, and writing a lot of things that are on the borderline between game and LARP and structured experience so that people can examine their own truths on a deeper level. Um, I'm a certified sex ed teacher, which branches over for the same bit. Game publishing, Vincent and I have been
gaming together. Oh, what is it, like 27 years, 28 years,
Almost as long
coming
as
to
I have been
publishing.
alive.
Yeah, we met and stuff. He was a year behind me at Hanford, so we met in September of 1990, and it was kind of like, oh, well, there you are, and that's it. We're done from there on out. So that's kind of my background, publishing wise. Powered by the Apocalypse stuff leads back to Apocalypse World, which Vincent and I wrote. Um, he did a heavy lifting on that, and then really came to understand, oh crap, we need to we this is something that's a shared thing. So when we did second edition, we were like, oh, let's put both of our names on it because it's a shared thing. We go forward. Some games are very much a collaborative work. Some are very much my work, or some are very much his work. And I'm just profoundly filled with gratitude to have a partner that understands the creative process in that way. The worst fights we have are over creative differences. It's like, no, this word, but this way, everything else we can sort out. But like, I don't think this layout is gonna be like this. But it's anyway. So that's kind of the scope of my background.
It's
We
quite
have
a
three
lot.
kids. Yeah, we have 3 kids. We have a collective 50, I think it's almost 60 years worth of parenting experience. So that's enough to make you want to lay down and take a nap.
Well, Meg, I'm glad that you mentioned all of that because a lot of those bits of information really, really help us understand the multiple levels to being a designer and how like it doesn't just fall into here I make a game fun. It's like here are all the experiences that craft how we even look at games and the kind of content that we want to have inside of them and ways that we build like the metagame things that we want to connect to um, experiences about how people even interact at the table. And so that's why today, y'all, we're talking about socialization in tabletop RPGs. And so, what is socialization? It's us getting together and doing stuff. Um, the ability to like talk to each other and communicate and share. And Meg has done some amazing, amazing panels at several different conventions about the topic, including all of all of the things. Uh, and one of the things I'm really interested in is how uh, the me generation, the millennials,
Yeah.
um, we have a really interesting relationship as half of the millennials. I kind of feel like we're two generations really. Uh,
Yeah.
Half of the millennials grew up playing outside and then getting like iPods and then slowly like moving across. So we have slightly better socialization skills, or we're able to communicate to each other pretty well. And then the other half has grown up where we've been. They don't have that experience really. They don't have the I can go out and make friends and go actually knock on people's doors and you're like, hey, I saw that a kid lives here. Can they play? Like that
Oh God,
sounds
yeah.
terrifying these days. Like people would be like, "Who is this child?" and then they're trying to murder me.
Well,
Um,
people could get shot. You'd go knock on someone's door. I mean, that's the reality. We live in a freaking weird world right now.
yeah, it's very
And
strange.
yeah, it's very strange. And the part that I go back to in this, um, you know, there's an ad. I'll sum it up in a minute, but there are um, powerful entities at work that have a financial like vested interest in keeping us as human beings isolated indoors, depressed, and consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they make money. And so that experience that you're talking about of like go play in the stream out back and catch frogs and then go see if the kid next door wants to kick a ball around, and then maybe you go to somebody else's house and watch the afternoon after school special or the
Yeah,
latest episode of Pokemon or whatever. They're not making enough money off you for that. So there becomes a greater incentive to make people isolated inside, depressed, and that means not necessarily like the psychological part of depression, because they can sell you a ton of stuff if they can keep you in that state. But also the pushed down part where we talk that spreads out to any kind of person who is in any marginalized population for any reason. If they can keep you pushed down,
Yeah.
and isolated and consuming, they have got you. Where this hits, there was an ad that just put this crystal clear, probably, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 years ago. And just freaking crazy chilling. School age, little, fifth grade, let's say fifth grade, white boy, straight to the camera says, I didn't go straight home after school and I never came home again. Check, it gets worse, man. Check it out, the same thing. So then a little girl, a little white girl, I went to the park by myself and they never found my body, sort of thing. Like these little tiny kids. And then it shows they're both outside. They're both outside.
Yeah.
One of them, little boy has a backpack on, little girl doesn't. Then little African American boy who's sitting inside and says, I came straight home and I forget what his tagline was. It was just, but it was very much like, I came straight home and didn't talk to strangers, like I didn't do anything. And then he sits back, camera zooms out.
Yeah.
It's him and his mom with video game controllers in their hands, laughing and having a great time, looking at the screen they're playing. Total message, 100% is don't go outside, go home, buy stuff. Whoa,
Keeping the attention span of children, young adults, teenagers inside means not having other people over, really, and either talking through the internet and etc. One thing that I want to bring up is that the way that it was when I was a kid. I was born in 1990, so I had a good 12 to 15 years where it was still normal to go out, all that whatnot. So the rules were go outside, be back by dinner, don't leave the street. If you're gonna go somewhere else, just say what block you're gonna be on. Oh, I'm going to whoever's house. All right, bye.
And then the same I grew up with.
If you're staying over for dinner, you call.
Oh, yeah.
I'm staying over at so and so's house for dinner. They're like, okay, be back before the lights turn on, or maybe like someone will drive you home or whatever, and the parent will just be like, yeah, I'll make sure that they get home safe. I'll send the other kids even to just walk with them home, and then bring them back.
Yeah.
And it would be a normal thing to be like, oh, I'm going to the park. Oh, like so and so. And one of the things that has changed so heavily that I think has further isolated us, and yes, y'all, this is coming into tabletop RPGs eventually, we'll get there, is that like not talking to strangers has become a thing that has gone from when you see someone that looks like dangerous, obviously, like children have the capacity to understand danger and we treat them like they don't. There was a huge difference.
I'm gonna hold up for 1 second.
Go for it.
I just want to put a pin on that the way that we have changed our understanding of what is childhood, and as we have understood that brain development doesn't finalize till age 25, we have pushed back of like, oh, we're just going to excuse all this behavior that like 20 years ago would be like, that is, what are you doing? Oh, your brain isn't done yet, so we'll just push back that. On the other hand, you have 12, 13, 14-year-olds who are sexually mature, who are totally able to deal with serious, you can even go younger, 10-year-olds who are totally dealing with mortality, with justice, with injustice. I mean, these like 10 to 14-year-olds, they are on fire with these big issues of morality, mortality. How do I want to be a person in the world? And we infantilize them systematically. Like, oh, no, no, no. And we don't give them purposeful anything to do
Yeah.
because our life has become so scripted into inside that, everything, like, it's like, oh, be comfortable, be comfortable, be comfortable. There's no, like, go mow the lawn, go to the store and carry home 2 bags of groceries.
Hmm.
We've stripped out so much. And in order to be happy in ourselves, we need purpose, we need agency, we need connection, and we need celebration. And those all come directly into role playing of like, this is what we give when we give a game to someone who's like, here, you can make your character who has agency and can be badass, and we're going to be so psyched for you when you roll well. That's what people want. And you
Yeah.
then roll the whole thing back of like, then what are you doing for backstory and that writing piece, or are you drawing your character and that's really cool, or you're building a world. And I don't know, yeah. So that piece of um uh, where you were saying, where I like stuck the pin in and said, let's just talk about what it means to be that age, where you want
Hmm.
to just hang out with your friends and it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But instead, we cut them down and put them in a
Now
box.
we're getting these games like Tales from the Loop and Kids on Bikes that are
Mm-hmm.
going back to that time period and saying, let's explore that time period. And what's interesting is that we all immediately make the rules that we had when we were kids because they're sensical.
Yeah.
Like, it's don't be out when it's dark because that's when people are going to be out there doing weird stuff if they're out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's an interesting thing where recently I did a bunch of traveling last year, go to conventions and whatnot, and I noticed like some big differences because I went to like Philadelphia, and in Philly the homes, like, you have those huge blocks
Mm-hmm.
that go on forever, and you're neighbors with everyone, and then at the bottom there are all of these small stores, and since they're small, no big company's going to buy them. It's all going to be locally owned. So we have
Mm-hmm.
all of these
Mm-hmm.
people who they own the businesses, they're also your neighbors, and
Mm-hmm.
those people who are your neighbors are also your barber, and they run the diner, and they run the small grocery store and the gazebo and all that. And
Yep.
so being a kid back in those days, even I lived in California, so it was suburbs. It was still that I'd wind up going to the same donut shop. I'd wind up
Yeah.
going up to the same grocery store, liquor store for candy or whatever. And
Yep.
you make small relationships with
Yeah.
people. It's like, well, I see you every day. I'm going to say hi, you know? Maybe eventually you find out that their kid goes to the same school that's down the street. You form these connections that, um, like, these people are strangers. But
Yeah.
it reminded me of one story actually where when I was in high school, I had to walk down to where the bus would pick me up because high school was on the other side of the town. And every day, about maybe 3 out of 5 days of the week, I would pass this old white guy, and he just looked real nice. He always looked like he was going fishing, like that kind of garb. And I was just like, we passed by each other, and I'd wave hi, and he wasn't one of the ones who would like cross the other side of the street or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
because I wasn't just a young black person, I was also like wearing like punk clothes all the time because my best friend. So I just looked like I was gonna destroy things. And he was very kind. And one day on a Saturday, we were on the same bus because all the other stuff was other part of town. And so I go and I sit by him relatively close, and I'm like, hey, and we start talking. And he tells me that he's been traveling all over the world, and here are the places where you can travel cheap, and here are the places
Mm-hmm.
I've been, and I'm studying Spanish in Mexico, and like I'm going here, I'm going there, and like here's all the experiences that I had, and here's how you can do it too. If you can get out to this place, here's all these things. Try hostels. There's some really nice castles that are cheap, and here's the kind of breakfast they have, and all the way. And I was like, I was shocked because back then that's not too strange, but
Mm-hmm.
nowadays that sound, the way that we make it sound to socialize with our communities in a
Yep.
physical space, it's like
Yep.
that would never happen. I'd be
Yep.
thinking in my head like, that dude is a serial killer and he wants to kill me because he's been looking at me. It's
Yeah.
like,
Well, there's a couple points that come in that like, one thing is stranger danger
mm,
is um is crap. right? It's just crap. Believe children. Yeah,
Yeah.
if someone tells you that that something has happened to them that's traumatic, believe them. Get to the bottom of that. But it's more likely that your kid will be struck by lightning than hurt by a stranger, because the people that abuse are
Mm.
close. We know that. We know that.
Right.
But what I was brought up with, my mom had to fight against that stranger danger thing. And you and my kids grew up steeped in that, where we as parents got told we were neglectful in big ways if we let you do the things of like go to the park or whatever.
Right.
And I got just chewed out by a crossing guard once, because my youngest, who was like 6 or 7 at the time, waited outside the post office for me for 5 minutes while I went in and put the, mailed, like ready, stamped, ready to go. I just had to go in, wait for people, put them to the counter, come out. Chewed out. Like, if I ever see him out here alone, I'm going to call the police. I'm like, what?
I used to be out there for 25 minutes.
Oh, yeah,
There'd
no
be a
problem.
line.
Come
It's
home
just
when
like,
the lights are on. Yeah.
my mom would go in and be like, all right, I'm going to play Pokemon. And if there are any
Yeah.
other kids out there, you're like, what's up?
Pokemon. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So there's this weird thing. And then the other weird thing is, like, we know in terms of primate socialization, especially in terms of human socialization,
Mm-hmm.
the less you have, the more you give. There are ethnographic studies you can find about communities that are, if you're in a poorer community, a
Mm-hmm.
less well-off community, everybody knows, like you were saying, like the guy at the corner knows if your family is hurting and might spot you an extra can of beans or whatever,
Yeah.
or know where, like, oh, your birthday's coming up, I'm going to give you a nice haircut for or whatever. We take care of each other. But this is again a place where the there's like big wheels literally
Mm-hmm.
invested in breaking those communities. If we can make a more mobile, if people have to drive 45 minutes to get to work, they're using gas, they're buying a car, they got to have car insurance. There's a whole bunch of money to be made off that.
Yeah.
And then they're stuck in that job because they need to pay for health insurance. And then they wind up beat out because they've spent, 45 minutes driving each way. They can't connect with the people they're working with because everybody else has to, you have to leave and go.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these things that are intentional to break that. And the process of reweaving community is tough. Another part in that is what you talked about, which is so hitting home right now. The tiny social interactions of, oh, I buy a candy bar every day after school, I'm going to say hi to you. We all learned, like my generation, and you and people up in age from you,
Mm-hmm.
could learn those skills of navigating a face-to-face interaction with someone across the counter, right? To say, how are you today?
Yeah.
Here's the item, and here's my money. Okay, cool. Thanks for the change. See you later. My kids, half of what they've seen is me come up to the counter and stare over here while someone else goes whoop, whoop, whoop,
Yeah.
whoop. And then the little thing flashes up and I insert my card
Yeah.
and follow the keypad. If I'm lucky, there's a person at the end who says, plastic or paper? You know? Oh, so that's part of the keys that we're like not handing down, like
Mm-hmm.
these tiny, tiny bits of how do you integrate with other people. And then that doubles back in if it's like giving you social anxiety to order breakfast at a cafe when you're with a group of people,
Yeah.
or pay for your whatever it is you need. If you don't know how to do that, if you haven't been handed those keys, you're going to struggle. And so how do we go back and hand people those keys? People who are 25 and under, how do we make sure that they have those keys? And then we have people who are like hashtag adulting, and someone comes on and gives them grief, and I want to reach through the screen and say, hold on, adulting is
Wait a minute.
hard. It's hard to do this. It's hard. No, nobody promised you a rose garden life. We're not here to pay bills and die, but we're not here to be like in an insulated little soft cozy place where everything is taken care of magically for us, because that's called the womb.
I'm gonna throw your hands out. I'm down with
Yeah.
that one. I'm gonna pull that one out later. Maybe
Yeah,
like
man.
20 years from now, I'm gonna be talking to my kid. That's called the womb.
That's called the womb.
And then I'm gonna call you later and be like, I dropped the line.
You had 9 months of that. Go pick up your toys.
So,
Yeah.
what's really great to me is that through tabletop, the thing that I'm seeing, and it was real immediate, was that one of the best parts about it is that you have this opportunity to come to the table physically with other people, and even online there is sort of like a deeper connection through playing tabletop than there is just chatting in some situations. But being able to sit down at a table, and of course people just start like with playing a game, but a lot of our community really sees the socialization aspect, which is we have all of these different people with different experiences and backgrounds. How do we navigate even being able to, and I feel like session zeros are a really good example of how we progress through this. But it's like, hey, maybe we should talk about who we are first and what we like and we don't like, and introduce each other, and maybe talk before deciding to get in a campaign. Are you getting what you want? What do you want to get out of this? And getting into that process. But at the start of tabletop, most people have no idea that that's even an option, because I feel like that's the lack of socialization there. People go in like, I'm playing a game with other people in person, strange, but like I'll try it, and don't realize that they have the options to like talk through a thing,
Yeah.
where I kind of like, if you flip it over and you go, if I was inviting over Jane and Joe from the gazebo, and little Timmy from down the street, and etc., we would be having that conversation where it's like, oh, hey, Timmy, like, you want to be the paladin? Cool. And Timmy would be like, yeah, because I want to be really strong. And it's like, oh, well, here are all the strong class. You can be a barbarian, blah, blah, blah. And people naturally have those conversations all the time. We do it, like, with our siblings or our family all the time. I want to sit in front because I'm tall. Oh, I want to sit in the middle because I like being next to, like, other people. I like being squished in between. And, like, all that kind of stuff. We have those conversations. Not even just in these super intimate situations. And so tabletop is bringing in this value of, hey, we are going to start doing that again.
Yeah. Yeah, which I totally love. Oh my God, love that. Because I feel like watching the arc of gaming come, in the waves that it goes, or the spiral that goes for, coming up from the origins in sort of call and response mythic storytelling, and like I like to go all the way back to like the Eddas and things like that, and like the epic poems and things where
Let's get in the dust.
There's a rhythmic response, and you're involved in this story, and sometimes there's a participatory element to it, and then you can carry on right up through like Victorian parlor LARPs, which I have books of on whatever, all the way up through the advent of D&D. Then we do this weird, interesting, like the split between tabletop and video games, because video games take elements of early tabletop, which really I think you want to start with Napoleon, and well, you got to start with Rome and the battle tables of like when we're doing tactical wargaming.
Right.
Napoleon, then D&D, whatever, big history, small time. And then there's this interesting place where video games, because of the media, takes that tactical numbers crunchy strategic parts and amplifies that, and storytelling and choose your own adventure and how to host a murder boxes that came out in the 80s, and LARP takes the immersive storytelling part, and they're separate for a long time, and I feel like they're starting to come back together. I'm seeing that in a lot of video games.
Yeah.
That are beginning to be like, you can play Dishonored on super low chaos and get a really neat story, or you can play Horizon Zero Dawn and have like there's a whole museum quest where what you do is you go find things and put them in the museum.
This
So
belongs
that's
in a
cool.
museum.
Yeah, right.
Just over and
Um,
over again.
yeah, and then we see that in tabletop too, where we're examining like the whole diversity so of game possibilities. You know, if you just want to do this bit or this bit or this bit or this bit, you know, there's a whole wide realm. But the part, and to your point, and to the point of social theory, bringing forward the idea that this is a conversation, this is a social construct, this is a thing we're doing with human beings.
Mm-hmm.
That even if it's text adventure, you know, texting and a play-by-play on a forum, play-by-post on a forum, or as real life face to face as we are now, or if you were, inshallah, someday in my house, you know, we could play a game. um, that there's a so that we're human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to react to each other and interact with each other as human beings. And that means being more mindful in so many ways of what baggage I'm bringing to the table, what lenses I'm seeing through, and where everybody's at, and how to support each other. And that's the handing down the keys. That's the, you know, reweaving connections. That's building the social network again in the way that is a real social network, as opposed to a media conglomerate social network.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that real quick because I feel like a lot of people say this like the kids like may not need it, or even not even just the kids, adults. Um,
Mm,
but you brought up gaming, and I'm seeing that I've kept up in the last forever, um,
yeah.
since day one. But we've seen this huge shift where all of the corporations they've shown that we're not interested in single player games. We want
Mm,
multiplayer games because tons of people play, and they
mhm.
really want to like they're cashing in on the fact that we are searching for community whether we know it or not. Even
Yeah.
though people complain about all of the really bad parts, people will still take part because they're a part of a team, because you get that experience of working together, and when it works just right, you have this amazing communicative experience. And they just don't know yet that you can just not go into that space where you have to deal with all the bad stuff and create your own good one in like a much more personal way. Um,
Mm,
and so, um, those skills that we're missing, I kind of want to drift a little bit heavier into the tabletop now. What do you feel like either specific games or mechanics that help teach those skills or even reflect on them?
mm. That teach social interaction skills.
Yeah, even if it's just your own, you can just.
Yeah. Well, there's, you know, 30 seconds of playing games together teaches social interaction. You know, it teaches turn taking. Teaches active listening. It teaches recognizing um, spatial relationship. You know, of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, my piece and your piece, and I got to not knock over your piece. So there's a ton of like early childhood stuff where you're just trying to learn how to be a level one functioning human being. Um, has a lot of gameplay. It's one of the reasons we play games with children. Uh, I love now that we're getting a lot of board games specifically that are great, so that we can be done with some of the ones like Snakes and Ladders. Oof, not so great. Not a big fan. Um, you know, games that meet children at the amazing level that they are in terms of brain development and scientific analysis and social analysis. Like a kid under 5 is a learning machine,
Yeah.
and there, you know, just give them, because they want to sponge that up. Let them do it. Um, so taking that aside, the things that a tabletop role-playing game can do that I think is most valuable in terms of social skills is allow people to try on identities that they don't yet have. Identities they might have one day, or that they're examining from a mirror perspective of, okay, I am a fairly quiet, um, soft spoken, meek person. What would it be like to play a brash badass?
Yeah.
You know, can I access that part of myself? Are there bits that I want to pull back? You know, how do I integrate that? I think role playing is in general fantastic for people thinking about relationships, thinking about their own presentation of gender and sexual identity,
Big
because
time.
you can try on stuff, right? That's the best part, you know,
Yeah.
trying on stuff, letting your mind expand, and also playing across, like, what is not intrinsic to my body, and how can I try to see things from a different point of view, because that's the whole goal, I think, of socialization, is how can I see things, or try to see things through your eyes a little bit. How can I have a greater understanding of 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 you, of what you go through, how your life is?
Mm-hmm.
How can I do that? And then, so tabletop lets us do that to some degree. And then it's a refinement process, right? Of, if we have a game that opens that up in certain ways and says, okay, here's dog eat dog. It's a game about, these islands and how the people are on these islands. Here's oh uh Misha's game. Oh, I'm gonna blank on the name. Begins with an O. Oh
Oren.
my gosh. Yes,
Oren.
thank you. I was putting a K in there. I'm like, this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes. Things like, which I'm super excited about. Things where, like, let's look at different attitudes. Dance in the Dawn, Mistrobe Gate, tons of things where can we get more perspectives, different people, different mindsets, and yay, yay, because that, every time we do that, it gives us another piece in the toolbox to see a broader picture of the world.
Yeah.
And then to bring it into a really fine point in terms of, like, practical skills,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of goodness to making a character sheet, to filling out a character sheet and going, okay,
Big
this is
time.
how I'm quantifying myself, right? Yeah. And you can see, like, these are my skills. This is the direction I'm headed. Here's what I want to, here's what I want to go. Here's what I can do. And then you can fit that back into your life and recognize, here's what I'm good at. Here's where I want to go. Here's how I can get there. And it goes to the point of, like, when you go to make a resume and you're like, how the heck do I make a resume? This is terrifying. I don't want to brag about myself. It's like, okay, yeah, but
It's a
you
character
make a
sheet.
character sheet for
Right.
yourself, right? So there's all these levels where you can integrate, but it takes that key of
Mm-hmm.
unlocking, going, oh, this is all a game. All of life is a game. And I'm not talking about monetizing gamification crap. I'm saying, we're kind of on this planet to get messy, make mistakes, fall in love, and mess around. Play
That's
games,
what I do.
off. I mean, whatever. So, and hopefully make the world a slightly better place than when we got here. So that part of actual practical tools for socialization can allow people for whom that is a struggle. Because for some people, it's really easy. Like, oh, they're just social, whatever that means. They're social appropriate to that, their current particular time and place, because that is so varied. But for people for whom that is any degree of struggle, having structure helps. The game design that we see more and more, where Monster Hearts is one that, like, things in Monster Hearts,
Right.
where there's of the social pull we have on each other, and to make that so transparent that it's on the table and go, oh, okay, in Inverse World is another one that has ways of, at the end of the session, of like, okay, what did you do? What sort of pull do you have? Like, oh, I now want to take care of this person more, or
Yeah.
oh, I really followed through on standing up to this person, or standing up for this person.
I actually want to interject real quick, because this really relates to a conversation that I was having with some friends the other day, that came down to when we were trying to figure out exactly why white people food is bland. And I'm telling you, the levels are great, right? And here's the thing: is that after figuring it all out, it's not because of course, there's the difference between what white people food is and cultural food, right? It's like you can have Danish food and Irish food and etc. Like that's not bland.
No.
It's good.
Yep.
Why is specifically like the American white people food culture bland? And so we really got into it because we had this like website of all of these recipes that just made no sense. It was you take the Jello and you take the beef and you put some whipped cream or all that kind of stuff. And so when we were looking at it, we were just doing this dissection, and the first thing that was really apparent is that these recipes were made to as a way to signify that you could buy the necessary brand name things in order to have the thing. The actual taste didn't matter. It was, I can make the brand new thing because they're popping out recipes left and right. So I can make this.
And they're on the label of the packaging, right? Exactly. That's the thing. Like, if you have the money to buy all the packaging things, then you can make the packaged item, and then you've made it. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So you can show off to everyone that here's all this stuff. And so there's this disconnect where the high financial white space went through letting go of recipes and making all this new stuff. And recipes is where all the flavor is. You have people passing these things down forever. And then because most of the communities that are in poverty, mostly people of color and some poor whites, are still passing down recipes and refining these things. And that's how we have food that is good and food that is not so good, and how people even have their palates changed. And so this broke down for me into, well, your that whole angle is, if someone has a recipe that is, this is why our food is so good, it's largely because it's like we have the same core resources, and that's why we can continue to hand this off. And the resources that you have say a lot about who you are and what you have, because it's like one of the on the side of the really weird foods, it's like, oh, well, if you have this particular thing, like Jello, that means that you have a refrigerator, and that means you have a particular amount of money, and you can live in a particular kind of neighborhood just immediately from having one item. And so when building a character sheet, a lot of it is saying the same things. It's like, well, you have these particular skills, where did you get them from, and all this sort of thing. And then to take it a step further into where you are, we as people can then use this reflection to understand a lot more about people just by what they are giving to us and sharing with us. And so we infer a lot less that is baseless stuff that we just get from whatever, and we have questions we can ask people to get to know them better. Because it's like, if someone asks me, hey, why do you wear a beanie so often? I'll be like, it's because my hair is short and it is cold. and, and we can get into a conversation. All these sorts of different things. Like, why do I wear a hoodie all the time? It's like, well, where I grew up, like, everyone wore hoodies, and I find them very comfortable. And there's stuff to get into. And so all of these different pieces of information that we're presenting to people allow these open points of information, and they're the same conversations that we are getting from when someone goes, you read off your character sheet and go, that's my character, and someone goes, oh, so like, were they this? Were they that? That open lane of questioning does not have that same anxiety as when you're asking a person about themselves, and we're going, we're teaching you a skill. Here's the thing, you can do this with everyone.
Yeah, and that level of that one level of remove, it's tough to be vulnerable. That is to say, here is me, here's my baggage, here's my bias, here's my background, here's my whole open heart. That's hard.
Yes.
So if you put it on a character sheet and you can play one level removed, you can create that intimate connection with another person, that like become friends over the table, become close over the table, and begin to learn about each other, and answer those questions. And there's the people who play the same character, or iterations of the same character over and over for 20 years, because they're trying to get to the bottom of this question they have about their relationship with their brother, and that's just the way they do it. Yeah, right?
I play the same character over, just different iterations.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's I do know why. It's because, or I have an insight. I may not know exactly, but when something happens to us that has meaning, um, we have a desire to process that event and to communicate somehow to someone, even if it's just to ourselves, how that changed us, what it like, what that was a thing that happened to me that had meaning and it's important somehow. And so there's two things that happen there. One is sometimes we have to say that over and over and over and over and over until we feel heard,
Mm-hmm.
until everyone who needs to hear this is what happened. This, this, this is the scar right here. This happened. And people can say, instead of saying, oh, but you're fine, or but you got so many good things out of it, or but like, so that people can say, I hear you. I hear that sounds like a lot. I hear you.
Yeah.
You know? So we do that. And then also we have the same internal process where we're like taking the scar, like, what is it? I gotta know. Maybe if I look at it from this angle, so that's the same internal process. And that's where you get people who do the same artwork or the same character because they're wrestling with a thing, and it can be really fruitful and it can take a long time. And sometimes it takes taking that character to a different game. What does it look like if I'm playing a character and I'm wrestling with my issues with my father figure,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm playing D&D or Ars Magica or My Life with Master or Monster Hearts or Best Friends, I don't know, those are going to be very different experiences. But if that keeps being a theme for me, I'm going to keep bringing that up, and eventually, hopefully, I'll get to the one that gives me the resolution I need to set that piece aside. And that's, again, the strength of socialization tabletop. Like, someone keeps doing that, like, oh, they always play that character. There's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Shut off. Let them do their thing. In it and it harm none. Let them do their thing.
I think it also can weigh into people finding a particular part of themselves that they really like that they don't get to have. And they will, because there's always that person who, like, in old school D&D, they're like, I'm gonna be the witty rogue, and I'm just gonna be quippy all the time. And it's like, maybe they're just way too invested in their normal life to where it's like, I wish I could just be flippant about everything, and have that character that doesn't have to be super emotionally tied down into everything, and really being able to, like, see and inspect those things about each other, even on, like, a really fundamental level in RPGs, is, like you said, it's really gratifying to go, like, your character's really fun, like, they always just bring something cool to the table, because what we're really saying is that, like, this person is fun. They're the one playing the character. That person knows that they can be fun, like, they can be that person because they are being that person.
Yeah. And you can step out of that in all these things of, like, okay, you're playing, roll the dice. If you're doing a roll the dice and that's how it goes, but you are hot. You're the charismatic, okay, you smooth talk anyone. And how powerful and empowering is that for someone who's 13 to 23 and struggling with ideas of self-love and am I lovable and can I put myself out there,
Right.
to be like, I'm going to play hot, sexy characters until I figure out how to be hot and sexy and how that be in the real world and how that be comfortable. The same with powerful characters. Characters have a lot of agency, and this comes to a place where, people who have less agency, if you're a woman playing, like, I am going to play a ton of badass battle babe brainer people that I will take no fucks. I'm sorry, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because I can't in my real life. I personally I do that sometimes. But it's a place where if you hand these toolboxes of what is it like to be the smartest person in the room, the spookiest person in the room, the hottest person in the room, the most badass, like, frightening person in the room, try those on, integrate that. What part feels good? what part feels crappy, and like, ooh, I don't want to be that. Okay, cool. That's direction for you going forward in your real life.
Yeah.
And that's the power of tabletop. And we play for escapism.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I got to be so locked down in my day to day that here I'm going to come to the table and just, it's going to be gonzo and goofy all day long. Cool. Or whatever. So we do escapism. We do tabletop gaming to try on different roles. We do it to analyze different parts of ourselves. We do it to
Simulation.
connect. Yeah, yeah. And we do it to connect with other people. When we think of a gaming session, there's a bunch of that is not technically game. It's the whole structured evening of like, I'm going to show up at this time and place, well, online or in person. I'm going to show up at a time and place with other people to do a thing. Maybe there's food involved. There's definitely some chatting, even if it's just like the 3 minutes before you go live on a stream of like, hey, how's it going? Oh, yeah, I've got a wicked cold, but I'm good to go. However, you're checking in with each other. You're making those little tendrils of human connection. And sometimes that's more vital. I played in a game years ago with a bunch of friends, and it was just mostly that. And then the DM told me and Emily, because we were like, this is, are we going to play or what? He's like, I just wanted an excuse to everybody over here. And if I say, hey, come hang out every week, everybody'd find other stuff to do. But if I say, hey, come over and play a game every week, everybody shows up. We like that structure. And this ties right back to stuff we were talking about at the beginning. And it ties to things like bowling alone. I think it's like Michael Moore's Bowling Alone. Anyway, whatever. The point is that all the social clubs that supported the social fabric of the world,
Mm-hmm.
especially in America, through the Second World War up until Vietnam, have mostly gone. There used to be bridge clubs, bowling clubs, like fraternal orders all over the place. All this stuff, church groups, civic groups, the Elks Lodge, whatever, that helped structure your lives. And part of it was that we had a greater level of, here is our roots, this is our hometown. But
Mm-hmm.
when you did move, you could hook right in. If you went to the Roman Catholic Church in Montana and you wound up at the Roman Catholic Church in New York City, you had enough framework that you could hook right in. Those were your people.
Yes.
Now, go ahead. Yeah, you have a point you want to make there.
There's a lot of people that I talk to who, we move around a lot. Everyone's finding new jobs or moving in with partners, etc. And there's this thing that continuously happens where someone moves and they go like, I need to find a hobby, because they don't have a way to make friends in a new place, and they're like, oh, where's the local this or that, to find people who have some common ground. And it's interesting because my friends who don't do like tabletop and stuff and are usually like the working 40 to 60 hours a week people are like, oh, I'm really just like friends with my coworkers, and when I go home, like, I don't know where would I go, like, where would I make friends? And I'm like, I play tabletop, so there are thousands of people across this country who would at least be down to hang out. And there are a lot of those people who we've never spoken before, and we don't know who each other are. And we could just be like, oh, well, there's a game in Massachusetts, and they're like, you text or whatever and be like, hey, I'm DC, you can see me on the internet, I'm a human being, I haven't killed anyone, can I come over? And then, like, sure, I guess, and you at least have that. And a lot of other people nowadays, really, within I feel like the sort of 18 to 35, like, there's that core male group that's always like, oh, that's where the gamers are, like, we sell to this group. But really, people of all types within that age group are still trying to figure out where exactly that is, because it's like, oh, are we all gonna go play Fortnite and Overwatch, or are we gonna go to the club, or I don't know where people go.
And that brings up like going to the club, right? So when I was in high school in the 80s, dance clubs were the thing. That was that
Mhm.
dance club. In the 70s, it was roller skating. I kind of got in on the end of that. But one of the things that happens now is we are much more culturally aware in this country of things like alcohol and addiction. And so the idea of going to the club is different now than it was. It wasn't the default. I don't know. I'm sure there's a huge parts of America that are still, that's the default, you go to the club. But I love the rise of gaming cafes and
Oh,
board
yeah.
game night at the local bar and trivia night and things like that, because it broadens out that scope. And anything that you can find places to connect. I think there's an interesting coda on that, which is I have young friends who this is their first year at college,
Mhm.
and they have maintained playing face to face with their high school friends over Discord. So they're like, this is my thing, Yeah, every Monday night we have the Baker House Band long distance edition, where there's somebody in Canada, there's somebody in Worcester, there's somebody in Rochester, New York, a couple other places, and they all organize their schedule to, this is the time we can all meet and play. And that has two effects. One effect is, oh my God, they're staying connected.
Mhm.
Wow, that's cool. Other effect is, for some people, that means they're not connecting with their people on the ground. And that's really interesting. I have two young friends who are dealing with that, who are like, I couldn't find, because I have this group that I'm so tight with, and I didn't really find anybody at school that was
Right.
I couldn't. And I think part of that is because when I was in college, you had to go to the game club, the UMass Science Fiction Fantasy Gaming Club, which meant I had to take a bus from my college over to that college to do it. It's weird. Anyway, weird stuff. And
Meg,
now it's very different.
can
Yeah.
we collectively go off at the fact that roller rinks aren't a thing anymore? Because I'm
Oh my
deeply
God!
upset.
That makes me want to throw things, man.
Roller rinks, because
Please.
when I grew up, there was a roller rink one town away, and it was the place where I don't. For anyone out there who has not been to a roller rink, even if you're not gonna skate, I highly recommend just walking in.
Just find one.
Yeah,
Go there.
because people of all ages will be hanging out. You're listening to music. You're just moving in a circle over and over again.
Over and over and over.
But
And there's like, oh, skate. And there's couples skate.
mm-hmm.
There's like, okay, now we're going to skate the other way. It doesn't matter. There's lights. There's video games. There's pizza. There's bad soda.
Yeah.
What more do you want?
And there are kids who are learning how to skate. There are teenagers who are learning to talk to each other, and like you could see a pack of like boys and be like, hey, go skate up next to the girls, and the girls are like, oh go skate up next to the boys. There's that going on. There's adults talking, people going on dates, people who have been there for 50 years still skating, people showing off
there's
tricks.
Like that old the couple, like gray-haired couple who look just like they're just like effortless.
Yeah.
Skate dancers,
ice skaters.
Just like these old folks, and they're like 80, and they're just gorgeous.
Yeah.
My grandparents got married because my grandfather skated up. They met at a roller rink, and he skated along and snagged. She had a comb tucked in her sock.
Mm-hmm.
She's skating along, and he skated along, snagged her comb, and skated off with it. And she followed him around. That's how they met.
That's so cute.
It's so cute.
Roller rink meet cute. Oh my.
So cute. Yeah, totally roller rink meet cute. But that's a part that we have lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it combines some things that are like everything you laid out. Yes. How do we do that again? And I think one of the reasons that they went down, inside, isolated, depressed, and consuming.
Yeah.
But also we are so afraid of being uncomfortable now as a society.
Mm-hmm.
We are so afraid that we might fall down and get hurt.
And go
So
on YouTube too.
yeah, right. So, but the litigation went through the roof for roller rinks.
Hmm.
You know, of like, is it safe? Got it safe? Got to keep it safe. Like, what if someone breaks a tooth or breaks what? You know, and so even so, there's that component, and then the YouTube component you mentioned about like we're afraid of looking undignified, or just looking foolish, or whatever. We're just afraid.
Yeah.
And then we're afraid of our past actions, you know, that someone's going to hold us accountable for what we did 20 years ago, you know, like some of the roller rink music that I listened to and skated to and loved in 1980. Like, oh, what is it? It's this Running Bear. Running
Hmm.
bear, love little white dove with a love big, big as the sky. I mean, it's this song that's got like terrible overtones.
Yeah.
I loved it. Does that make me a terrible person? I don't know. You know. So there's all these components. We're afraid. We're making people have become culture has become afraid of people being physically hurt,
Hmm.
afraid of being emotionally hurt, and afraid of, you know, that nothing ever dies and we can't ever grow. We can't ever. We're not allowed to ever change. Some people don't. I mean, we are right now in a space where we can see some people missed that boat.
Truth.
Um, but like, how do you be a young person, you know, 13 to 20 young person, and experiment with your world and try on different roles, and like, what is it like if I, you know, dress up sharp and go to the roller rink and talk to people? You know, is that, am I gonna, you know? But yeah, I'm like, I would be 1,000% for bring back roller rinks in a big way. Like if someone said, okay, you have $2 million to do something in your town. I know where the roller rink in town used to be. It's a wooden floor. It's the bottom level of the armory. It's a wooden roller skating floor. And people who are in town who are in their 70s grew up skating there. I know where it is. It's not operational now because of liability issues.
Right. If I ever make it big, we're
Yeah,
opening
right.
up a
We're opening up roller rinks. There'll
countrywide.
be a string of roller rinks. It'll be like gaming and roller rinks. We got to come a really good name, and it won't be like you meet in a tavern, but it'll be something. You know, it'll have a reference. It'll be good.
We'll get it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's my vision. Anyway, that's a little tangential, but where do you want to go now?
I'm thinking that like tabletops are the new roller rinks. That's
Okay,
that's
I
where
dig
we
it.
get it now because uh, it's, for example, if people are friends online, like very acquaintances even, and they're like,
Mm,
oh well, this person seems interesting, etc. We end up talking with each other and being like, you know, like we should game at some point. Like hopefully we can play a game together, and being able to do that um, online is really cool. But a lot of the time, I don't schedule lots of games online because it's more draining than it is
mm,
like fulfilling.
mm,
Um, but in person, it's great to be like, oh, we're gonna be at this con together, and this like is the only time we're gonna see each other maybe this whole year. So let's think about a game over the next few months that we really want to play. Oh, I really want to play this game. I want to play that game,
mm,
and then have that experience, and we build up even before the game begins. All of this talking, and like we opened up this gate
mm.
where because of how tabletop is, where it's like simulation is fine, be whatever you want. All of the stuff is wiped away immediately, and you can say, I want to be this type of character, and etc. And a lot of people will even sign up for games because they see other people in them. It happens all the
Yeah,
time. It's,
yeah,
oh, I would
yeah,
really like to play with that person. I've heard this person's a really good player, and I want to, or this DM, or whatever it happens to
yeah.
be, and people get to know
Or
each
the
other
other thing
that
of
way.
like, I don't even care what we're playing. I just really want to hang out with you. So
Yes.
whatever, you know. And that's all. That's so good, and it's so one of the things that missing, like as we've identified a more movable populace and the breakdown of places that had us in close proximity,
Hmm.
um, in order to build long-term relationships of any kind, it takes repetition, it takes exposure, it takes familiarity and learning the different facets of each other, um, and uncovering those ones of like, oh, I didn't know that. Are we still cool? Okay, we're still cool, awesome, integrated, changed, you've changed me.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that can happen if you go to the same school with a group of people all the way through K to 12, and then you come out with it, and like half of those people are married to each other because they've got that biz. But if you don't have that, building that level of connection takes longer.
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're like, oh my gosh, I totally love this person online, they're so cool, we're chatting, this is great. Now we were at a con game, our characters were like total best friends, we love that. 6 months later, we were at another con game, our characters were in Monster Hearts, we're totally doing it. 6 months later, we're like, hey, do you want to get coffee? And it's a much longer process, but it provides some of that same, let's know each other in deep and meaningful ways so that we might build lifelong connections.
Mm-hmm.
People, any relationship you have is only ever of one of three types. It's either for a reason, and it can be incredibly simple, short, and transactional. You're getting on a bus and you say, can I have a transfer to the A bus? Sure, here you go. Done. That's a relationship. You have a relationship with that person. Can be seasonal, like we're serving in the same military unit, or our kids are in the same school play, or we're at the same company, and those are seasonal things. Or maybe we're just at the same con, season. And then there's lifetime people where they're just gonna be in your life in whatever capacity forever, and maybe you don't see them for a decade, you only get the occasional email, but you have that level of life connection. And you know my friend Joel and I haven't been in the same physical space for at least 20 years, um, but through Facebook we keep up a little bit, and we're like, oh hey, let's try and get our families together and go to the park this summer.
Yeah.
And we've been trying that for before his daughter was born. But we still want to try. And so that thing of building that space, and that's one of the things that's wonderful about tabletop, is that it lets us a little bit fast track that, right? If we sit down, okay, my friend Neil. Let's talk about Neil for a minute. Neil, if you're out there. This was 25 years ago. So Neil is, I don't know, he's like 6'2", very fine, handsome African-American man who was a philosophy PhD student and taught kickboxing on the side while he was bartending at the best musical venue in town. He was hot as hell. Everybody in our social group was into Neil at some point or other, except me. I was like, Neil's a great guy. Great guy. Yeah, he's the full package. But just not my thing. Mm-hmm. Until we were in a game together. And then my character and his character, and I'm like, hold on. I get it now. Woo! It was so funny. It was so funny because tabletop gaming can give you that. It's one step removed, right? And so you're one step removed. It's not me hitting on Neil or Neil hitting on me. It's that our characters are a thing in this game because that's how we've set up this world. It's like, mm-hmm. And we're doing like the how are our characters connected web at the session 0 beginning. And like, this makes total obvious sense that we're together. Yeah. That's the sort of thing that can fast track intimacy in a real way that's supported by the table. And like, we can, okay, it's in the game. We can back out if we want, we can break character, we can make a goofy joke, or we can carry it through. We're like, whoa, I really want to talk with you after for a while. And that supportive situation is kind of what we're looking for when we're in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, when we're coming up through grades, going to the roller rink, mm-hmm. where what we're looking for is a place where we are safe to experiment, where it's safe to take that chance of having that intimacy, of building that bridge, that connection to another human being. But we have support and we have safety. And this is the wonderful place that chaperones at high school dances give. Go be making out in the corner. Cool. If it's too much, you can just say, I'm going to go get a drink, and you go hang out closer to the chaperones, and it's all gonna chill right down. It's okay. You have the container,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the whole thing. You have the container and the support, and that's the part, as grown-ups, as sitting here 47 years old, that's the part that I feel like I'm screaming about in is like, it's so we've handed off so much power to young people, which I think is phenomenal, by the way.
Right.
There's places where I've seen us believe them when they say, "Oh, we don't want it school dances." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you kind of do." And he's like, "Oh, no, 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 we're not really interested." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Like, come on, someone has to hand down the keys. This is how you hand down the keys.
Yeah.
You give them a place to practice. If you don't give them a place to practice, and if you don't provide them with access to bicycles, they will never learn how to ride a bike. If you don't provide access to hills, they will never learn how to ride a bike down a hill or up a hill or whatever. The whole bike metaphor. You gotta you gotta have places where it's safe to practice, and tabletop provides a phenomenal place to practice social skills. And if you don't have them, it's a place where your group can help you get them, and can have, say, you know, can act as a brake on people who are just hogging the spotlight, and or playing somebody else's character for them, or like, oh, and then you do this. I'm like, well, no, just let me, don't color on my page,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So it can be a place. I think that's amazingly powerful.
I think that that is a really good note to head into wrapping up on. If I think that what's really powerful about it all is uh, unlocking that conversation about the potential of what we can do with socialization in tabletop is really important to hand off, and therein people continue to foster that conversation. If you had to, if you had final thoughts, something to, if someone for some reason happened to only listen to this next bit, I don't know. That's the arbitrary thing that people say on podcasts.
If they only listen to the outro, what are they going to get? Yeah. Okay. So final thoughts about socialism, like socialism. Nice slip.
Next episode.
Socialization in tabletop role-playing games, and why it's valuable to think of. So I think my thought there would be, as a designer, think about what you are incentivizing in your design. What sort of social interactions are you incentivizing? And that means you need to look carefully at the fiction you're portraying, how the mechanics support that, and if they make a good match, because you want you want what you put forward as, this is the sort of story, and this is the sort of social agreement and social experience you're going to get in this game, to match what the mechanics do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they are out of step, it grinds terribly and you undermine yourself. So as a designer, have that in mind. Have that this is a social experience. This is not just resource management with other people sitting at the table. You are conveying the tool for a social experience. And dang, how cool is that? Put some thought into it. Yeah.
That is wildly incredible, and I am a big fan, as you know what kind of games I like. So, Meg, I want to super thank you for being on the show. This has been absolutely astounding, as are all of our conversations.
Awesome. So much the same. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Super big fan.
Hopefully, I will see you again soon at Big Bad Con.
here's hoping. Oh my, like it's like it has been on the calendar since last year, and the whole family is like, okay, what do we have to do to get there? How do we get everybody there? What do we do? So yeah, it was phenomenal. And when you talk about like the social impact of role playing, watching my young people be embraced and supported and welcome into gaming as peers with the top edge of their age group. Um, you know, Elliot's going to be 19 this summer, and Toby's 13. Hopefully, Sebastian will be there too. He's 22, and that um, nothing like it. It's freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They like thrived on that. So I hope so, my friend. I will be there with bells on if I get the chance.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Tell Elliot I said hey. Tell Vincent I said hey. Tell the other kids I said hey. I don't think I met them directly, but
Yeah.
I am excited. This episode is gonna go out on the One Shot Podcast Network as the first episode of In Theory. Next month we will have a different guest and a different topic. I will be letting y'all know what that is on Twitter. We will have some links in all of this stuff. Meg, anything that you want to recommend will go down in the links. You could just put tons of books and essays down there if you want to. So, like, feel free to go ham. And
All right. Some
thank
of
you,
them may
everybody.
be like, yeah. Some of the links, it might be an interesting puzzle of why I put that there, but that'll be good.
I'm excited. That's its own episode.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, favorite, rate, all of that stuff on the internet. You can follow Meg at Night Sky Games on Twitter. And you can follow me at Dungeon Commander on Twitter. We will see you. I'll see you next month. Meg will probably be on again on the show. I guarantee that as long as Meg is down, she will be on again on the show.
So down.
Rad. Then it's happening.
Awesome.
And a surprise guest next month with a brand new topic.
Sweet.
Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you later.